All right, welcome. As we all get in here, Brother Jensen, are we ready to go? Can you hear me okay? Okay. If someone in the back is poking in, wanting to come in, I have one more chair up here. So I guess it's fun to have standing room only, right? So my name is Lee Osler, and I'm on the High Council in the West Richland Stake, and I'm speaking about Mill in a Bag. We've got one right over there. We're speaking about Mill in a Bag. Who's heard of that before? So maybe a third and two-thirds haven't, right? So this will be fun. Um, where to start? Several years ago, I saw a headline in a St. Louis newspaper that said, "Feed a family of four for under $300," and I didn't believe it. I thought that's just there's no way you can feed a family of four. They did a civic project in St. Louis to feed the less privileged in their town. It was a civic thing. It was a city thing, not a church or anything. It was just the city of St. Louis. And this was the recipe put together by professional chefs to give it complete nutrition that had a 30-year shelf life and was under $300 for a family of four for a year's worth. That was the starting objective, and I didn't believe it. So I took the recipe and I made a spreadsheet. I'm a little bit wound tight about this kind of stuff, and so I went and made a spreadsheet. Went to three different places: Costco, Winco, at the time was Cash and Carry, and I priced the ingredients for 365 this, right? Converting quarter teaspoon times 365, how many pounds would I need to get, right? And it came to $284 on a spreadsheet. So I thought, all right, I'm game. So I started doing it, and I didn't realize then where this was going to take off to. So today, or 2 months ago, I went and took the same thing back. I just went to Chef Store, which is the old Cash and Carry, priced the spreadsheet out again, and it's now $464, if I remember right. I'll show you the thing here in a minute. So it's gone up in price, but it's still under $500 to feed a family of four for a year, right? And it's a bean soup recipe. So we're gonna get into this. That's what sparked this, and you'll see kind of where this can go. But once you do this, I have 20 grandkids, and I don't want any of them to go hungry. If you get my point, right? I don't believe in just say, well, if their parents don't get it, that's okay. My grandkids aren't going to go hungry if I can choose. Right? Their parents might, and actually, their parents are doing okay mostly. Some of them set good examples, but anyway, that was my motive, and so it started with this bean soup, and as you'll see, we got really into this. And pretty soon people in the ward said, well, or the families would say, well, can we come and do that? And we learned that. So by the time we were done, we were teaching 50, 60 people at a time in the cultural hall, filled full of tables and processing lines, making meals in a bag. Yeah, try it. Okay. Power of suggestion. Yes, all right. Now it's not going to go for it. Are we going to have individual boxes to put these in soon, or just bags? and it got to be quite a big project. And so when I moved to this state, um, the state president asked me what I like to do, and I told him, and so guess what I get to do now. So, so maybe there's some design in all this, and hopefully you can glean from that. But I can tell you with assurance from my own testimony, if you had 365 of these, if you had 365 of these, you would have a year's supply of food. Now think what that would feel like if you had this and it was sitting in your closet right now, in addition to whatever else is in your pantry or in your basement. If you had this, the feeling that you would have is I'm prepared. And that's the point where I think you could pray and expect manna to show up in a deficit. We'll talk about that. So that's how I got into this. And and so as we go along, feel welcome to ask questions. So last conference, um, I was finding myself going to sleep on the Saturday morning sessions, and I thought I've got to walk around, do something because I'm just sitting here, and it's so I set the tables up, and I did 180 bags in 5 hours, 2 sessions of conference and the in-between part. 180. Now, I forgot to tell you, this bag, when you cook it up, makes a 6 to 8 quart stock pot. It's amazing. By the time you add a carrot and a potato and some meat and whatever's in the garden, right? It's a 6 to 8 quart stock pot. And my wife and I eat on this for 2 or 3 days, and we still put some in the freezer. So I only need 180 of these for my wife and I, right? So there's 180 right there in 5 hours. That's $250 because my 400 and whatever 60 $80, right, just a couple months ago, if you just round it up to 500, half of that is 250. So for $250 and 5 6 hours worth of work, I have a year's supply of food. And those, I'll show you the picture later, those fit in 3 half-size black tubs with the yellow lids, and they're in my closet. And that's a year's supply. So I know I'm not going to go hungry, right? That's the point. So it doesn't take much to do that. So after the after President Jensen asked me, "What do you like to do?" and I told him, I said, "Why don't?" And he said, "Well, I'd like to do that." And I said, "Fine, bring your wife over. We'll do it." Because I've done it for hundreds of families in the last state. We've trained a lot of people. And he goes, "We'd like to do that." So after some arranging, the state presidency shows up, and we did this in the garage. This was a February. It was a cold, and we had heaters on, and this little tub right here has 20 bags of these in it. And I said to President Hunt, I said, "I want you to look at this bag as they're in mid, they're scooping." I said, "Just stop and look at this." And he goes, "Oh, okay." I go, "What do you see there?" And he goes, "Well, I see some bags in a gray bin." And I go, "What I see is that's a month's supply of food for a family right there, because one of these makes so much, right? That's a month." And he looked at it and he goes, "This is really easy, isn't it?" I think the word he used was simple. This is really simple, isn't it? So maybe that was my mistake because they're converted. They get this. And that's why there's, I think, some of this resurgent, um, urgent discussion today. So this is interesting. You can't really see this, but this is a story, and I'll just paraphrase it. This is back in the early days. Brigham Young, they're in the Salt Lake Valley, and they have their crickets and their famine, and and there's a call that's put out that says it wasn't long before many called for Brigham Young to invoke the law of consecration upon the saints and order them to pool their resources in a church-wide united order. He replied that the law of consecration under united order involved stewardships. They had ignored the law of the harvest and were now attempting to twist the law of consecration. Consecration was voluntary. What the disobedient wanted was socialism. They wanted Brigham to use his authority to compel the obedient to give up their temporal salvation to save the disobedient. Compulsion, duress, and confiscation are tools of the devil. They deprive one of the agency and destroy stewardship upon which the united order is based. This principle of welfare has been preached many times to the saints from the start. It was always to see to your own family's needs first, then give any excess, if there was any, to the needy. That's the law of consecration. Um, he said the fruits of willful disobedience had put them outside the law of consecration. The Lord would neither hear the prayers of the disobedient nor rob from those who had obeyed. If the obedient wished to be charitable on an individual basis, that was up to them, but he could not and would not compel them to do so. That's a really interesting story, in my view, because we have this idea that, well, when times get tough, we're just going to call it all in, and we're going to meet in a central location and kind of divide it up. And again, to me, that's not proper doctrine. So I'm not going to say that or a version of that may not happen, or we all may just volunteer that. But my point is, we each have a stewardship to take care of our own families first and not expect the church to come save us, right? That's not the church's role. That's why they teach a 72-hour kit, right? Even in a disaster, you stay put 72 hours unless your home's not habitable. You don't flock to the gathering place. We talk about it's like you don't go there, you stay put and you take care of yourself and you save yourself. That's the point. Question.
When COVID hit, I had a family member say, well, we have enough a little bit, and then whatever we don't have, the church will take care of us. And I was like, nope.
No, they don't understand it.
Right.
I've been in the meetings and I know what I know. So anyway, so with that kind of said, yeah, this is the point. How many times have you heard this? I know where I'm going. Um, I don't know. Why would you do this to your children and family? Why would you put your family at risk? Why not just put some food and provisions away? I'll come teach you how. Let's just get it done. Or if you do come, you better bring everything with you because we're going to compound, we're going to do something, and you better bring shovels and rakes and you'll think, you know, there's no freeloading here. So anyway, um, uh, if all our cattle had died through the severity of the past winter, if the insects had cut off all our crops, if we still proved faithful to our God and to our religion, I have confidence to believe that the Lord would send manna and flocks of quail to us. But he will not do this if we murmur and are neglectful and disunited. So this is my point, is if you're the widow's mite and you put a can of beans away every year or every week, that's all you can do. If you're doing the best you can do and you're following that inspiration and revelation to get her done, then I think you can get on your knees and you can pray that the oil cruise is filled. You can pray that the quail show up. I just can't see that you could, with a straight face, look at the Lord and just say, well, don't you love me? I've, yeah, so much so that he wishes you would have been obedient to the counsel so you wouldn't have put yourself in this situation. So those are kind of some of the groundings about this. The other one is about, well, we don't need to do this because we're really supposed to focus on spiritual. We've heard that. I can quote President Nelson saying the most important thing is spiritual preparation. And we think, oh, well, then that means temporal isn't important relatively, right? That's what we think. That's why we don't need to do this anymore. How many of you remember the day when it was a 7-year supply? And then it was a 2-year supply. Then it was a 1-year supply. Have you heard that it's now a 3-month supply? You've heard that, right? Some of you? I've heard that. Is it? They haven't read it, right? They haven't read the guidance. It says 3 months. I call it pantry food. And then a long-term supply. You get to define that because on a church, global, other countries, laws, they can't really specify that because there's other laws in other countries. Long term, you get to take that up with, but the council's been 7, 2, and 1. Figure out what long means, right? So, so what is this idea of spiritual temporal?
They're one in the same.
One and the same. You cannot be spiritually prepared if you are not temporally prepared. Now that's hard to chew on for some people. You are not spiritually prepared, even though if you're active in all your church and your scripture and do your ministry, everything perfectly, you're not spiritually prepared unless you are also temporally prepared. How temporally prepared? Whatever the Lord holds you to be doing and what he has counseled you to do. That's how. You get to decide that for yourself because everybody's different with different health needs and property, assets and so on and so forth. But you get to figure that out. So this idea of spiritual and temporal, I like to think of them is merging. They're the same thing. Now think of this, 90 plus 95, I'm going to say maybe even 99% of the daily revelation that you get, every thought that you have is revelation, is it not? Is not that the light of Christ? Is not that revelation? Every 99% of the revelation that we get is about temporal stuff. It's about going to work. It's about feeding the family. It's about cleaning the house. It's about picking up your underwear. It's about turning the TV off and doing family home evening or scripture study or whatever, right? And then there's some that is purely spiritual. It's like, what does the scripture mean, or what am I supposed to do in my life? But by and large, all the revelation we get is about temporal stuff. So I'm looking at this thinking, well, this temporal stuff, why don't we use that as a laboratory to practice what we learn in Relief Society, priesthood, church, scripture reading, and so forth? We're there learning how to receive revelation and hear him. What's he telling you about rice and beans and safety and sanitation and where you're going to go potty and where's the water going to get filtered, et cetera, right? So why not use that? And how you do that is you go, how do you initiate revelation? Somebody blurt it out because you'll know the answer. How do we initiate revelation? We ask. So when we ask, and then we go, well, what about water? What kind of water? What kind of filters? What would happen if, right? What would happen if? And you'll get thoughts. And then what do you do with stuff that you're contemplating? You study it out in your own mind, right? And then ask again. That's revelation. That's spiritual preparation. The fact that I'm skilled at doing that means I can apply it in the laboratory of temporal preparedness. They're one and the same. And so there's no longer this dichotomy of, well, it's either or. It's like, no, they're the same thing. Use your spiritual skills to get revelation on this. Become temporally prepared, but be spiritually guided in doing so. They're one and the same. So that was my mini sermon. This is President Hunt. Joyfully, this is our theme right now at award conferences, especially. Joyfully prepare for the second coming, spiritual and temporal, acting in faith to prepare, guided in spirit. Temporal preparedness plan is a matter of spiritual importance. I'm quoting President Hunt. Okay. So President Benson said, what if? What is the word what if? The phrase what if is a what? Question. So what if there's no food? What if there's no water? What if there's no electricity? What if the supply chain breaks down? What if? What if? What if I can't flush the toilet? What if, it's like all of a sudden within, I'll give you 3 minutes, you got to figure air out, but in 3 hours, what should you have figured out in your home? 3 hours, there's a shelter. What else in 3 hours? Nope. That would be a shelter. I would say that. 3 hours. What else have you got to have figured out? Eat. I'm going to say shelter.
Where everybody's going to be. Or is it guys? Water.
Nope. You got 3 days on water. 3 hours. What have you got? I'm going to give you 3 to 6 hours. We'll fudge. Why? Because some of you have bigger bladders than others. There's the hint. And your kids don't have as big a one as you do, nor does my wife. So you better figure something out within 3 to 6 hours, right? So are you thinking about that? What if? What if? What thoughts did you just have? Do you have a bucket with a pool noodle? Do you have a bucket with something? Do you have a bedside commode stuck away in the garage you could pull out inside of 3 hours? Do you have a solution for that problem? You go figure it out, study it out, get some revelation, ask your neighbor, come to a class, talk around out there in the gym, to all the booths, and walk away with ideas, because that's revelation. That's being spiritually prepared. So what if? So we just went through this. What if there's no electricity, no fuel, no communication, no water? I mean, and I get what that feels like, right? This is like a lot, and you're going to be, but what you're going to do here is you're going to say, what's the most important thing I should be working on? Or what's the three most important things, right? So
You just said two, shelter and then sanitation. Was there a third?
Well, we already did, because after shelter and sanitation hygiene needs, then I've got to figure out water. Okay, water, and then food is finally 3 weeks. And if you're healthy, it could be longer, because you can figure out how to fast and make things stretch. So anyway, not to belabor that point, but that's kind of an essential, I think, message that we go home with. And it sets the stage for why have meal in a bags. This isn't the only reason to have meal in a bag, but it is a solution that I came up with. So the concept is uh, eat ready to cook meals. They're menu driven. You reverse engineer it. You figure out ahead of time, where you're going to wind up. Whatever you do and however you do this, the requirements are they need to be nutritious and have a long shelf life, easy to fix, easy to share, because it's peace of mind. So if you had 365 of these, you'd eat beans every day, and this is all you had. You'd have beans every day. But if I had 7 different recipes, I'm just going to have you kind of, you can kind of pass those around. Anybody in the back want one? So this is a bean recipe, bean soup. Okay. Um, I personally would get tired of eating beans every day for a year. But you can vary this. You can flavor it with chicken and beef. You can put onions and potatoes and zucchinis and tomatoes, whatever's in the garden or out of cans or whatever that you've got, and make a variety or a variation of it so it takes care of some of that. But you can also make rice-a-roni, or you can get some freeze-dried stuff and make hash browns, or do some oatmeal, or go find a meal in a jar, right? So I think I left my handouts in there, but anyway, I have a website. You can write this down. It's approachingready.com, because I don't believe you're ever totally ready. Approachingready.com, because that's what we're doing, is we're approaching it, right? We're never there. And on there it's 26 recipes. Find your own, make your own. Bishop Myers decided he was going to make his own, and it's like he learned how to do this, and said, my family would like to do this, this, and this, and so they made their own. It's like, I really don't care. That's your decision. That's your revelation. But learn how to do something like this.
What did you give an email address?
No, a website,
Website, what?
approachingready.com.
You want to take a picture of it?
So yeah, the handouts that we have a QR code on it that will take you right there. There's recipes.
Or
There's
you
ins-
have a handout like
Yep, yep. So if you have that, and it'll take you to the website where I've got a 4-page handout that goes step by step how to do this for this recipe. I think this is the hardest one to figure out, and the reason why we'll get into in just a minute. So if you know how to do this one and it's easy, then you can do all the others. It's just an adaptation of how you do it and how you store it. Christian.
One suggestion is to make sure that you're putting in food that your family's going to eat.
Okay, that's the first suggestion.
Because there's this false thinking out there that if kids are hungry, they're going to eat anything. It's not true.
No.
Kids will starve.
Okay.
They eat something that either they don't like or they're unfamiliar with under a stressful situation. Make sure they've tasted it before, and that you're putting in food that they will.
So that's part of your personal revelation. Personally, I don't care. It's food. That's my first requirement. I have food. Then I'm going to go into variations. I'm going to say, oh, let's mix this up. Let's change the flavoring. Let's do whatever, right? But my first tier is I want 365 of these, right? I got food. That's a peace feeling. Then, or as you then, whatever, then that's a really comment here.
So how, like, we were from the other side of the mountain, so you're right, we do completely different, but how are you gonna cook them?
Okay, I'll tell you. There's there's 8 ingredients in here. 5 of them are beans or legumes. 3 of them are grains. So you need to soak the beans, right? So you don't want to mix them all together. So I put the beans in the bag, all the legumes, and I put if you'll notice when this comes around, I put the grains in a sandwich baggie. Um, I didn't bring it in, but it's just a sandwich baggie, not a Ziploc, because you want air to be able to get out of it when you. And I put the bouillon in a sandwich baggie because 30 years from now, 20 years from now, I don't know that the bouillon will be good still. The beans will, but I don't know that the bouillon will. So I can smell that and say, or I have a fresh bucket of bouillon, I'll just use it and toss. But at least it's all in here as a complete package. And then I just cook it and I add my amendments, whatever's in the garden, in the fridge, hanging on the hook in the back, whatever, and go there. There's a comment back here first.
Your website says you got 26 recipes. What about the physical equipment?
Okay.
Does your website
Yes.
find what equipment you need also?
Yes. On the MIAB, Meal in a Bag instruction sheet, on the last page of that, if you download that document, it's a PDF, and there's a full page of live links that you can click on, and you can find out where I went to get my bags, my O2 absorbers, the baggies, the sealing deals. I mean, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but this is all you need. Go to Goodwill. That's your sealer. You don't need a Silamill. You're not sucking air out, because if you suck air out, you're making it a tight package, and all the sharpy, pointy things inside make holes in it. So forget the idea that you need a Silamill. This is just a $3.50. I can't read that. What does that say? No, the price.
Oh,
$6.99. $6.99 at Goodwill. I usually get them for $3.99 at Goodwill. So that's all you need. So, question here. Did you have a question? It is a Silamill bag.
You don't need the vacuum sealer.
No,
Okay.
and I wouldn't. If you want to use your Silamill to seal it, but not suck the air out of it, you can do that.
Okay.
But this is a lot easier and faster and quicker, and the grandkids like it as well. So, okay, so let's go back to this was
Question, what is the storage on this? How long can you store?
well, the beans and the rice are 30 years.
30 years.
The bouillon, I wouldn't give it 10. I don't know.
Does your website go into that?
Yep,
Okay.
in the instructions, which is why I packaged inside the bag. I packaged the bouillon in a little baggie so I can pull it out and it doesn't spoil everything else. I can separate it, right? And I've got the beans and the grains separate, so I don't have to sort through them when I dump them out of the bag.
Since you're not sucking out air, you're not really antioxidants.
You do need an antioxidant. We call it an O2 absorber, and it's lost in there somewhere, but you'll see it, and you'll see a little package inside there. It's an oxygen absorber. They come like this, and this is the last thing you put in the bag. So you put all your bags, like I had 180 out on the couch, and then when I'm ready, I open this up because it's starting to suck out room air, and this is just iron. It's rusting, basically, as it's consuming oxygen. It'll get hot because it's an exothermic reaction as the electrons from the iron are transferring to oxygen. So you take these and you drop one in each bag and you start sealing them. And then you reseal this. So you need some kind of a device to reseal this, because if you used half of them and don't repackage them quickly or soon, then they're gone, right? So question.
If you have enough, I'll fill like a mason jar with them. If you have enough, then you can seal that.
You can do that.
Suck it down and it'll seal it.
I'm OCD, and I go, isn't that a little bit of air in the mason jar? So I got a little adapter, on my food saver thing that I can suck the lid down on a mason jar.
So you want to vacuum seal it.
You would do this with a vacuum sealer, but I have a $3.50 vacuum sealer from Goodwill that will do the job. Goodwill's a good place. Okay. So this was the spreadsheet. This was the idea that was the ad, and it came into $282. Actually, it was $268 if I wanted to get everything from Winco. And I didn't want to, those bulk dried things. It was like, that was too much. I just wanted to go to a place and get bags off the shelf and walk home with them. Under $300. Okay. So today it's $468 for the same stuff at the restaurant supply place. So, people say, well, I can't afford, food storage. And it's like, start here. Do you really need 365? I don't know. You probably got 90 days worth of food in your pantry right now. So you may only need 270 bags if you're going to be really precise, right? Of 1 year. Spend $500, get all the stuff, the bags, the O2 absorbers, print your paper of the recipe. I mean, do all of that and seal it up, stick it away. You've got a year's supply of that. Done. Finished. Over. Now you can start getting inspiration for something else. So if we divide that amount by 4, this is 100. If we break it down, that's for one person is $117. So, and it's like it's not about money. This piece comes is the priceless part, right? Because we're not talking about $5,000 worth of freeze dried, a pallet full of whatever. If that's where your inspiration takes you, then do it. But this is a good starting place. So again, this is the handout, the source sheet. That's what it looks like. The back page of it has all the links on it, and you can click on them. You can Google, say, O2 absorbers, Mylar bags, because when you're done and you've got 180 or 360 or 90 of these, you're not done yet. All I've taken care of is water and oxygen. I still have to think about pests, rodents. I have to think about sunlight, and I have to think about temperature. So these go in a Mylar bag, and that gets sealed.
Can you seal that with the Mylar bag?
I don't, because you can, yes, you can. I don't, because I've got a different device. It's more manly,
Oh,
like an iron.
is mine for the light?
Okay. So this goes in a Mylar bag, and then that bag then goes in a bucket or a tub with a lid, and now I've got rodent stuff. You see what I'm saying? Then I just need to put it in a cooler than water place.
The Mylar serves a purpose for light most, or is the Mylar?
These are semi-permeable.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So in a year or 3, I'm not believing that I'm O2 protected anymore. So these are still not perfect. So I put them inside Mylar, and I'm happy then.
And you could put several in it. Depending on the
I
size.
put 36 in a 5-gallon. If you get a half-size black with a yellow top, half-size tub, and put 2 5-gallon bags in it, like they're shopping bags, and I start stacking them up from the bottom. I'll show you in a minute. I can get 36 on each side, so I can get 72 in one of those, and that's about all you can lift because that's full of beans.
Yeah.
So you don't want the big one because you won't move it.
Did you say you put those bags in another bag?
Yes.
And that can seal that bag?
No, I don't need that because each bag has its own O2 in it, which means I can open this up and I can take out 5 or 6 and just reclose it and stick it back.
Yeah, that was kind of long. You don't put oxygen sort of in the Mylar bag.
No,
Semi-permeable.
no. If I've got 36 of these, I've got 36 little individual ones. And this is a pint-sized bag. So
You can get the Mylar bags that kind of have the zip top on them to seal them. So they're sealed, but they're not airtight sealed. But sort of.
this is what the recipes look like. And I got like 26 of them. Probably 3/4 of them are vetted. A few of them I haven't. Some of them never made it to the list because they were a fail. Like I wouldn't even eat them. So, but you just print these out. The instructions are there. You cut them in half, and you put that. You can see in the ones that went around. If they've already gone back, pass them back to the front. I put them in. This is a Sillamil bag, so it's channeled on one side, clear on the other. I'm OCD enough. I want to read the recipe, so I put it on the clear side and then I seal it. So this is the website, approachingready.com, where those instructions are. This is what it looks like in a stock pot. And you can make it however you want. You can change the flavor. You can add amendments. whatever fruits, zucchinis, cucumbers, tomatoes. There's your variety, right? It just suddenly you've got a lot of food in there. Um, this is me coming out of or out of the restaurant. I mean, you can see frozen bags here because they're on sale. I have a freeze dryer, so I can easily add other things to this because I can. If you had a dehydrator, you could do the same thing. But I buy it in these 25 and 50-pound bags, and you need 35 pounds. If you're going to do 365 for a year, you'll need 35 pounds of each of the 8 ingredients: the red beans, the white beans, the garbanzo beans, the white beans, the black beans, the barley, the rice, the lentils. I think I named 8. So if you got 35 pounds, which is a 25-pound bag and a 10-pound bag, and bags, you can buy those online, and O2 absorbers, and some pepper. I buy it in 5-pound things. You can buy them. This is about 50 some odd dollars at the restaurant supply place. It's about $34 on Amazon, and the McCormick brand is almost $90. So you choose your poison, but you're going to want a lot of pepper. So I buy it in 5 pounds. I've got a lot of pepper because we do this a lot, and you want a lot of pepper. Okay. For a lot of things. Okay. For a lot of things is my point. So don't get the little container. Get this, and be done with it. So by the time you do that, and you have I put it in this because it's handy when people come and do workshops, but you get your ingredients like this, and now you're ready to go. Any questions on that? Maybe it's kind of hard to visualize that, not seeing it actually happen. You're welcome to come to workshops. I do them in my garage on Saturday mornings. Periodically, there's a clipboard to sign up if you want to come do this. We'll probably do 10. They're $1.50 a bag. I provide everything. You just reimburse me. I would say if you're getting into this, you don't have to come away with 35 pounds. Start with 10 pounds and maybe make 100 of them or 90 of them or 50 of them or whatever, because you already have lots of other stuff. These are old prices, but these are what the bags look like. Bouillon is in the tubs. You do not want cubes. You're getting dry, shelf-stable, non-refrigerated bouillon. And I personally don't care if there's MSG in it.
Sorry.
This is survival food.
Okay, so what store is this?
This is from the restaurant supply store. Now it's called Chef's Store. Used to be Cash and Carry on Fowler Street. Okay.
The Catch and Kill.
But wherever you get it, I mean, you can buy this online as well. But that's where I source it. These are taken at Winco, and that's fine. But these are the bags. They're 25-pound bags, and they're plus or minus $20 to $28 a piece. So this is the idea of the vacuum seal bag. You saw them. I passed them around. This is your idea of the O2 absorbers. You can suck them down into a jar so they don't get spent. The reason I don't like jars is because these heat up if they're absorbing oxygen. And so if you put them in here, often you'll come back and you'll see water condensing inside the jar because it's not on the outside of the jar, it's on the inside, just like a ice glass at the restaurant is on the outside, right? This is on the inside. And so now they're getting wet. And so I don't like that. I just suck them back into another bag and be done with it. But you can do that. That's fine. I sometimes will put a desiccant. That's a silica dioxide bag. You see those in packaged goods sometimes. You can save those and refresh them in your dehydrator if you want to be OCD about it. They're not very expensive. So I just bought a couple big bags of that. And sometimes when I'm doing my own dehydrating or freeze drying, and I think I'm going to throw a couple desiccant bags inside with the food that I just processed because I'm not a commercial grade, whatever. So I use those for that as well. Oxygen absorbers, they come in different sizes. For the pint size, 100 cc is what you want. If you're doing a larger bag, a quart size, you probably are going to graduate to the 300 cc, which is the same as what you do for a gallon size bag. And you can look that up online. It's like how many cc's of an O2 absorber do I need for a 5-gallon bag or a 1-gallon bag? There's formulas will tell you how to do that. And again, just use them as you're ready. So you get everything done, staged, you're all filled, and then you drop the O2 absorbers in and start sealing. That's how you do it. And you'll learn how not to do that as you make a mistake and you wind up um, realizing that this has been spent. The other tip I will give you is mice love these. There's something about them. Actually, I had 3 milk crates full of these. I had thousands of them because I did a lot of them, right? And I went out and it's like, oh, what is that? It's like it's already open. I picked up the next package and it's like there's little mice marks in it. And they had crawled up through the milk crates that these were in and had bitten all of them. Totally gone. Hundreds of dollars worth of these things just gone. So now I put them in very secure tubs that have latches. That's how I store these. So if you can learn from my mistake, you'll save a lot of money in mistakes.
Is there a trick to know your extent? Like if you like have them open
Yeah.
for a certain amount of time while you're packaging?
Well, they'll get hot.
Right.
They'll also get granular. They should be soft powdery, but if they're hard, crunchy sand consistent, then they're already rusted. They've already reacted. Mm. So this is the recipe in a red beans, chickpeas, white, black, split peas. Those are the grain, or those are the legumes. And then I have lentils and barley and rice in green. Those are my grains. And then the bouillon. That's all I put in the bag. All the other things that you would put in your pot come later when you're actually cooking it. Whatever's available. And as I said, you figure it out. You don't want to mix them with your grains because how would you then soak just the legumes, right? So however you separate them, it could be in a nylon stocking. It doesn't matter. It could be in a Ziploc that you take a pin and poke holes in it so that the O2 absorber can reach. It doesn't matter. It just needs to be separate. Um, so this was a pint. If you did say, well, I'm going to do some of my own freeze-dried meats, or I'm going to add that, you'll need a bigger bag, so you get a quart-sized bag. So whatever. I don't like that idea because the commercial people um, package those in number 10 cans, and they're expensive, but there's a 30-year shelf life on them. And when I open the can and repackage them and put them in this, I don't know if I've got 30 years anymore. I might as well just leave them in the number 10 can, and if I decide I'll add it when I'm cooking, then you see what I'm saying? And I'm really hesitant because I have a freeze dryer. I'm really hesitant to do my own meat and put it in there because, again, I'm not sure about what quality, and I'm looking at this as a 10 to 30-year solution. To me, it doesn't compute. So anymore, if I'm putting meat in my recipes, I'm doing it that other way rather than me processing it, even though I technically can. You figure that out. Let's see, we already the rice-a-roni. The rice-a-roni, did that go around? I don't know if it did. That was one of my first variations because it's so quick and easy. It's just spaghetti and rice. And I used to like sit for hours in the garage with the blender, like chopping and chopping and chopping, pulsing to break up the bits. And then I figured you could buy them cheaper in the number 10 cans from the Bishop Storehouse and get them already in called spaghetti bites. And then I figured, heck with that, I'll just buy the big stuff on sale at half price whenever it's on sale, and I'll put it in 6-inch sticks, and I'll break it up when I pull this out of the bag and cook it. So I'm getting lazier, but more efficient, say. But I'm not worried about mixing because the spaghetti's not a 30-year thing anyway. It's maybe a 5 or 10, I don't know. So I just put them all in the same bag. I put the rice, the spaghetti, the bouillon, and I seal it up, and it's just a quick, easy. It's a variation from beans, right? That's my only reason. So these are my grandkids. This was a few years ago, and we just they have so much fun, and we just set up the processing lines. These are the little bags, and we just do them in stations. So we'll do 30 or 40 of the chicken bouillon and the beef bouillon, and of the vegetables. So there's some different vegetables in this for some different ones, and I put the paper menu on the clear side so I can read it. And we just set up a processing line and we just go for it and we start making these. They love this, by the way. And the Staples had that little red easy button. Remember that? So I got one of those, and it's like we put it there, and every time one gets made, it's like that was easy. So, and they love that. It annoys the parents. So, here we're using a sealing machine, which I used to do all the time, but I've learned it's just not necessary, and you risk running because the kids love to make it rock hard. But if you get a kernel of rice in there that's sideways, then you've got a hole in your bag. So we don't do those anymore. They loved it. And this is where you get your flat irons and a whole bunch of other stuff. I could do an hour on Goodwill, or we could go there sometime together. And it's like you feel like a hoarder, but you're going there with a list that you created with Revelation. These are the things I'm working on. And once every other week, I make a tour through Goodwills, and it's like if it's on the list, it's going. And I came away one time with a Berkey. They're not the largest one, but a Berkey in package still. It hadn't even been opened. The plastic hadn't even been opened. It was $16. Two filters in it. It felt like a Thanksgiving rush. It's like get this in the cart because nobody gets it, right? And it's like
Dumb question, what's a Berkey?
a Berkey is a gravity-fed water filter. So you put the contaminated water on top, it goes through filters, it drips into below.
They're like $200, so $16.
And that's kind, but you can make your own. If you're wanting to, I've got sources for filters. You can probably get filters for $50 or $60 that are even better than Berkey, and you can make your own with a 5-gallon bucket. So I made all of my Christmas gifts to my kids are prep related. So this last year they got water distillers because I made water distillers and gravity fed water filters. So plus, the other one I made was well, I'm still working. It's a chamber vac out of an old pressure cooker. So anyway,
Do you have any of that on your website as well?
no,
Those items? Okay.
look at my personal. I will teach you if you want. So the other thing is you want to inspect the seal. You're gonna do this, and you don't want them to be crossed. Like, because if there's a little bit of that going on, right? If it gets caught, it's not sealed. And so you go, oh, that's why I like these flat irons because you've got a good inch wide seal instead of a little tiny one. So you just go, oh well, I better go down and do another little bit here until you're. And if it's like I just cut it off, put it in a new bag, but you don't want to. You don't want to. If your kids are doing this, your grandkids, it's like they just like doing it, and it's like no, it needs to be tight. So I usually do it like this is how I actually do it. I hold it in my hand like this. I'm right-handed. And I put it against my belly so I can kind of push on it and get most of the air out. And then I'll do this side, and then I'll come over here and do this side, and I know I've got a complete seal. It's like 99% of the time it's just done perfect. So that's what you're looking for, is you're inspecting the seal to make sure that it really is doing its job. Leave a little air in the bag, because if you don't, this happens. It's on top of the paper, and you suck that thing tight. And if that was a grain of rice, you'd have a hole in the bag. Beans a little more rounded, it's probably not a big deal unless somebody, it rubs on something. So think of potato chips. You leave something in the bag so that it doesn't get crushed or damaged. So this was my 180. So when I was done making 180, they fit in. I did bring some. Should open them. So just take one. You can download this and print it. This is just, I made 25 of them. I didn't know how many was going to be here. This is a 2-gallon Mylar bag. And so you can put this in here. And then you just take this and you just start layering them in there like you're filling a grocery bag until it's up high enough that you need a little bit of head space. So you got to get a lid on this, right? So then you do this, and you take your sealer, whatever it's going to be, and you do this part, and then this part, and then this part, and then this part, and then I leave about 2 inches unsealed, and I switch all the air out of it, and I get it down into the headspace, and then I've got this last little tag right here, the last 2 inches, and then I do that one, and then I leave this. Well, let me say this. Then I'm done, right? I can put the lid on it. This is a side thing, so I'm going to step aside and talk about if I had wheat or beans or rice in this bag. If I just dumped 5 gallons worth of wheat, you can put 33 pounds in here. So if you bought 100 pounds, you'd have 3 of these buckets. I don't worry about if it's food grade or not because it's in Mylar. So you're going to fill this up to within about 1 or 2 inches. You're going to you need 2,000 cc's of O2 absorbers. Then you do the same thing, seal, 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 seal. The last thing, pressure it down, get as much air out as you can. I used to get really OCD. Did I say that before?
Yes.
I get an aquarium tubing on a vacuum pump and stick it in here, and I go, or something, trying to think, if I get all the air out, and it's like, life's too precious for that stuff anymore. I'm just experimenting, okay? So give me credit. So, but you do that, and now you don't put the lid on. You let it sit in your garage for 2 or 3 days because it's going to consume all the oxygen in here. And if this is tightly sealed, it will collapse the bucket. So you let this do its work for 2 or 3 days, then come back and put the lid on, and then you can start stacking these, or your wheat and your rice or whatever. And on each, however you're doing this, on each tier, row, put some wood so that the next one's sitting on top, because this is going to be full of beans, it's heavy, or rice or something. The next one's going to be on the lid, and I don't want the lid bearing the weight. I want the walls bearing the weight. So I put sticks here, like little last sticks or something, and I stack them, and then I put last sticks, and I put the next tier, and you can stack that up because it's the wall of the bucket now bearing the weight, and you're not pile driving on the bottom when breaking the lid. Does that make sense? Okay.
Do you find it better to do wheat like that instead of getting the boxes of cans of wheat from the butcher store?
You're gonna offer a prayer and look at your budget, and you're gonna figure out what's the best. I don't think there's best. I put all mine in both.
Mhm.
I have some of the other um, things. I have some in the other and in number 10 cans. But when I'm buying it several hundred pounds at a time usually.
Do you feel like price wise it's better buying it in the big bag bulks versus than
You have to price it out and just sometimes they'll be on sale. Like when you're at the chef store, they'll have a hot special, whatever it is. It's like if 5-10% off. And it's like I'm looking for that kind of stuff. Because in my mind, I have a list. I don't need it now. I just need it in my projects. And so if I am looking for pasta because they have a certain brand of pasta at Cash and Carry or Chefs where you can walk in and they rotate it different um, pastas, but it's 50% off. So anytime there's a 50% off sale, I load up on that pasta and I take it home and I bucket it in Mylar and stick it away. 'Cause I'm looking for deals that you decide.
no?
But
Do you store your buckets in the garage?
yes and no. Um, in the home that we lived in previously, it didn't have any room. So if you walked into that garage, which they're still there, you would see that behind all the refrigerators and freezers and shelves, there is a wall of buckets. You can't even see them unless you look between. And it's like, you know what? I call that insurance. I figure that if it could last as long as it did in the desert of Egypt for all those years out in the open or whatever they did in clay pots or how piled up, I just think that, let me just make this comment though, is if you've gone through this procedure of putting them in a Mylar, in a bucket, and it's sealed with O2, right? The only problem I have in that scenario is the temperature, but that's only 3 months of the year. So the other 7, 8, 9 months of the year, I'm okay. I'm quite favorable out there. So I thought, well, I'll just move them all in for 3 months. And I thought, well, That's too much work. I'll just go buy more wheat.
That's.
I'm just, it's like, that's me. Somebody else may say, well, I can't do that. And it's like, well, then put it in your master bedroom. There's a statement, it's attributed to Harold B. Lee, who said, and I can't give you the perfect source. I've been trying to source this, but it's out there, folk legend or something that's attributed to him. And he said, if you knew what I knew, you would pile it up on the floor, cover it with a cloth, and walk around it. And that's yeah, again, I can't quote that's scripture verse or scripture doctrine, but the notion of that has really been instructive for me because it's like, who cares if I walk in my master bedroom and that half of the bedroom is all food storage? I can look at that, and it's like having $1,000 in your pocket, and you just kind of fondle it. And you go, I have it. It's like this feels so good that it's there, right? And some wives or husbands would say, not in my bedroom, and I'm like, you choose your hard. Then I don't know. It's like, yes,
All of our kids have rotate through.
I don't. It's a waste of time to me.
You're not gonna get that otherwise.
I don't know. It's there. That's my attitude. Now, I know you'll go read chapter and verse somewhere that says you should be rotating and be a wise steward. And it's like, I'm just going to buy another 100 pounds. That's my attitude. Maybe that's not yours because you have a different idea about it. And I'm perfectly fine with rotating. I've opened up food storage and it was not okay. And I just say, oh, that goes away. It's insurance. I don't use my insurance all the time either, but I have it. You see what I'm saying? That's my perspective, but I'm not going to teach you that that's what you should do. But if it's easy for you to rotate it, these shelves, racks, put the can on the top. It's like, to me, that's a waste of space. To me. So I have it. And I also have, I'm not suggesting that this should be you. I approach my food storage with that consecrated approach. It's not for me. This isn't for me. I've got 20 grandkids, and there's probably people that I will meet someday who need it more than me. And if I've done those things, I really believe I can get on my knees and expect some manna. Something is going to happen because I complied. I can't guarantee that. I don't know. But I know the other way is true. If I didn't do all this stuff, how could I expect those blessings? That's just my little philosophical. So anyway, my point here is this 180 fit in 3 of those half-size black things and a 1 5-gallon bucket. For my wife and I, that's a year's supply of food. Right there. That's 1 year's supply of food. Check the box. Now, it's not the only food we have, but I have a 1 year's supply of food right there in that picture. See what I'm saying? So then you go back to, but am I going to like that? Well, let's get some other recipes. Let's try some other ideas. Buy a freeze dryer, do something different, right? This is my manly one. Okay, this is really awesome. You have to almost wear gloves with it because it gets so hot, but it does a great job. It's called Heat Jaw, I think is what it's called. Anyway.
It doesn't melt the bag.
No, actually it doesn't. This can melt the bag because you can get that way up high. You'll melt plastic with that. So you have to, it's like when you put that on plastic, it's a 1, 2 off and it's done. So 5 gallons in a bucket, sealing them. You can use an iron. Those are all my slides. So I hope this has been helpful, at least to give you some ideas, okay? Because again, the meal in the bag is the idea of can I have something that is readily, quickly fixable, it's accessible. I've complied with something in an easy way. I don't need 7 buckets or 10 buckets to have to figure out what am I going to do with them now. I have it, but the last thing I want to do in a crunch is have to figure out how do I cook beans and rice and what recipe and do I have spices and I mean all those considerations. So this is a nice, easy way. It's a good family project. It's not relatively that expensive. If you stick with these. Now, if you start doing chili and you're thinking, I got to put tomato in the chili. How do I get tomato product in my bag of chili beans? There's an interesting question, because if you bought a freeze dryer and tried to do your own tomatoes, good luck with that. That's not, that's a lot of tomatoes just to do a few bags. If you said, well, I have a freeze dryer, so I'm doing tomato um, paste, sauce. What's the other one? Tomato puree, diced tomatoes. There's a lot of water in that. If you're freeze drying that or dehydrating it, that doesn't work. So I thought, well, I'll get number 10 cans of tomato powder. Those are $30-ish, $25 to $30. You can get 10 scoops. Um, I don't think I brought the chili one in. You can get 10 scoops, 10 cups out of a number 10 can, which means each scoop is $3. Put that in the bag. It's still not enough, but at least it's in the bag, right? So now suddenly my cost of the bag just in tomato is $3. And then I got to put all the other stuff. And if I were to put meat in it, it's like so you kind of have to do the math and figure out, now I'll put the tomatoes in out of the garden I'm growing at the time, or some other way. I compromise and I go, I can afford one scoop. I'm going to do 50 of these and I'm done, right? And at least I have a little variety. But that's not the first thing I do. I do the beans and the rice and the cheap stuff, and because that's a lot of food. And I can meet somebody at the door and say, you're hungry? Here's a meal. Go feed your family for a couple of days if you need it.
Have you experimented with putting your freeze-dried vegetables in there, like carrots or beans, and put that in the bags?
Mhm.
Does that work?
I'm okay with vegetables.
It's just not the meat.
I don't put the meat. I don't trust the meat because meat has fat in it. And you can't freeze dry fat. That doesn't preserve. So some people differ with me, but I just think there's a bunch of bravado with them there. I don't, you can't freeze dry fat.
For a camping excursion next month.
If you're doing it for next month, within a short time, it's like knock yourself out.
Yep.
But for a 10 or 30-year solution like this, I leave it in the number 10 can and figure it out later, or just go take one of the calves out of the stall and figure it out. So